If it's a high-level fighting game, anime, or cartoon, you know the use of ki has to get thrown into the mix. But how does ki work in the Street Fighter universe? That's what Nexus will explain. Let's get into it.
Ki, also known as qi in Chinese culture, is a preternatural and esoteric form of energy that is said to be found in all things. Within living beings, ki can be wielded and harnessed via martial arts and other forms of physical activity, as well as specific exercises. Ki can also be quantified as the strength and build of one's body, along with health, finesse, and muscle. Many fighters in the series are seen wielding this power in their attacks, manifesting in projectiles and attack moves that are engulfed in energy. The ki works in a fashion that is realist in most games and works similar to how it is shown in the Marvel vs. Capcom series in games like Street Fighter, Pocket. Ki can take on a neutral form of energy that all living things and nature has. According to supplementary materials, its temperature throughout the series is also said to vary upon one's disposition and internal motives as well, regardless of one's manifestations. Those who are motivated by negative emotions such as Akuma are said to have cold ki. Those who fight with extroverted passion and a sense of justice like Chun-Li are said to have lukewarm ki. Those who fight for the sake of improvement and justifying their need for combat like Oro are said to have warm ki, and those who use psycho power are said to have blazing hot ki, ironically due to how the negative ki redirected but without anywhere to direct itself to manifest by the psycho drive's mechanics, becomes extremely erratic due to it being stored. Oro believes that all forms of ki ultimately come from a universal source, and that their various manifestations are simply alternate methods to breaking physical limits and obtaining more power. These forms of ki are not inherently evil powers, rather they are used maliciously by people to cross their normal boundaries. Oro's knowledge of ki allows him to even utilize the Satsui no HADOU, albeit only to demonstrate it to Dalsim. Satsui no HADOU, also known as the Surge of Murderous Intent or Dark HADOU, is a dark energy-based ki force that is the antithesis of the power of nothingness. A user of the Satsui no HADOU gains immense strength, as well as the ability to both sense and absorb other sources of power to make themselves stronger. They also gain abilities such as telekinesis, flight, gain a healing factor, and can also potentially influence the emergence of the Satsui no HADOU in others. All of this is at the cost of losing their humanity and compassion. They develop a cold, negative outlook on life, a nihilistic detachment from themselves, as well as other people, and develop an obsessive, dark, murderous, and even suicidal desire to fight. The CHIKARA no HADOU, also known as the Surge of Power, is Guken's toned-down derivation of the infamous Satsui no HADOU. The difference is that the killing intent was removed and inherits a willpower. They gain high levels of power but not as much as the Satsui no HADOU. They can sense other powers but cannot absorb them. They obtain a better healing factor, super jumping like mid-air jumps and dashes, and focus more ki into attacks that are energy-based and physical. The Kyosui no HADOU, the Surge of Mindless Intent or Secret HADOU, but widely known as the Power of Nothingness, is a light energy-based ki force said to be able to defeat the Satsui no HADOU. Just like the Satsui no HADOU, it makes a person unbelievably powerful, granting invincibility spiritually and physically to many attacks, as well as sealing off evil power and making the user a stronger fighter. The Jindan, better known as the Golden Elixir, is a form of ki that is made up of natural energy. Senjutsu practitioners, known as sages, learn to draw natural energy inside their bodies, blending it with their own ki to create Jindan. This ki adds a new dimension of power to the user's techniques, while also allowing for the use of techniques and abilities that would not otherwise be possible. If mastered, Sennin, one will create within their body Jindan that will make them permanently a wielder of those powers, as seen with Oro. The user's own ki can take on elements one is more sympathetic with. As such, various elemental energies like flame and electricity are seen. An affinity is the element that the warrior manifests first and the most. It is noted that, according to the Illuminati, they believe the maximum number of elements one could manipulate is 3, not including light and darkness, since they aren't specifically elements, as demonstrated by their 66 arts. The manifested elements seen up to date are: Earth, the user gains properties of rock in their attacks or their body. G is a user of this element. Metal, the user gains properties of metal in their attacks or their body. Urian and G are users of this element. Magma, the user gains properties of magma in their attacks or their body. G is a user of this element. Fire, the user gains properties of fire in their attacks or their body. Ken and Gil are 2 examples of this. Electricity, the user gains properties of electricity in their attacks or their body. Ryu and Guken are 2 examples of this. Wind, the user gains properties of wind in their attacks or their body. Cody from the Final Fight series is a user of this element. Sound, the user gains properties of sound in their attacks or their body. Guile and DJ are good examples of this element being used. Water, the user gains properties of water in their attacks or their body. No one has actually used this in attacks, but Chun-Li is stated to and seen having it in Street Fighter V. Cold, the user gains properties of ice in their attacks or their body. Gil and Colin are perfect examples of this. Poison, the user gains properties of poison in their attacks or their body. Fong and AKI are the only users of this element. For light and darkness, those 2 are more aura than elements. These denote what type of fighter you are dealing with. Warriors with light usually hold positive intentions for fighting and/or positive views of the world. Combatants with darkness usually hold negative intentions with their actions and reasons for combat and look to do not good in the world. Light. Warriors that hold positive intentions or take a neutral stance. Ryu is a perfect example of this. Darkness. Warriors that hold negative intentions or neutral intentions. Mikali is a perfect example of this. Faith. Warriors that have a strong belief in their religion. Dalsim is the only example of this so far.
Ki in the Street Fighter universe is used in a more realistic type of way rather than how you see it used in a universe like Dragon Ball. It keeps the series grounded and relatable. But after watching how their attack look in MVC, I think the series could work as a universe like Marvel. Heck, they already did it in one Street Fighter game, maybe we might get it in another.